Tonight, I am going to be talking about chapter 5 of the book Everyday Consciousness and Primordial Awareness. To start out with, I want to make it clear that primordial awareness can also be talked about in terms of primordial wisdom, that I have an earlier copy of the book and actually does have primordial wisdom on the cover. And later on in this chapter, he does say that primordial awareness, the Sanskrit word is jnana, J-N-A-N-A, and the Tibetan word is yeshe. So it's a matter of translation. The meaning is the same. He is going to be talking about in the 5th chapter, the 5 kinds of primordial awareness. And he begins by saying that there are mistaken expectations from meditation practice, which he talked about in the previous chapter. And these can be very simply extinction or nihilism, that if you meditate and reach fruition, that there is nothing there, there is no self, it's a total extinction. And that, of course, is incorrect understanding. Another incorrect understanding about fruition is, in his words, there is an incredible multiplicity, that somehow or another, this is kind of going in the other direction. Extinction or nihilism is one side. This incredible multiplicity, isn't it fantastic? Wow, look what I've got. That is the other extreme. And then the third is, and I've not run into this one before, but it is in the book, and that is that you will have exhausted your loving kindness and compassion for others. It's kind of related to the extinction, that there's nothing there to share with anybody else. So all of these are misconceptions about fruition. Now, he goes into the 5 kinds of primordial awareness and their essential self-nature, and talks about how to practice in the correct way. And actually, the remedy for these 3 different types of misunderstanding is to practice in the correct way and reach fruition, and to see clearly what is going on during this transformation. So primordial awareness is Buddhahood. It is the goal of the path. And there are 5 kinds of primordial awareness that manifest as qualities of the Buddha. Before going into each of these 5 types, he divides them into 2 categories. The first is, quote, the highest understanding of listening, and this leads to the attainment of mirror-like primordial awareness. The other is meditation on equality, and this leads to the equality of oneself and all sentient beings. And this is the cause of future attainment of the totality of primordial awareness. To continue teaching the Dharma to others, this means that you have done a lot of studying, you've accumulated knowledge, you've developed the capacity to distinguish. And this is the cause for future attainment of discriminating primordial awareness. This also needs pure motivation when you teach. Pure motivation is, of course, to benefit others, rather than having it mixed with, well, this is going to make me look like a big, important person to others when I teach. Another point is that performing actions for the benefit of others, this is the cause of future attainment of being able to liberate others. Again, it requires pure motivation while performing the actions. The Dharmadhatu wisdom, or a primordial awareness, pervades the other 4, and it doesn't have its own cause. So these were the causes of each of the 4 other primordial awareness. He then divides the primordial awarenesses into 2 groups. The first one is, quote, The primordial awareness that knows the nature of reality exactly as it is. And basically, this is seeing emptiness, experiencing emptiness. This is Dharmadhatu primordial awareness, or Dharmadhatu wisdom. It is seeing beyond the delusions, the confusion, the misunderstanding that ordinary beings have and that we have in our present state. The second category is called primordial awareness that knows the nature of reality to its full extent, end quote. This is the knowledge from the perspective of others who are confused. And this contains the other four kinds of primordial awareness. Another way of putting this is the two truths. One is relative, the other is ultimate. Ultimate is the way things are, relative is the way things appear. And a fully enlightened being experiences both, realize that the ultimate is the ultimate of the relative, and the relative is the relative of the ultimate. They are not two separate things, but also realizes that the relative is relative. We'll go into this a little bit later. So all five of these types of primordial awareness are attained by purifying the eight consciousnesses. And he goes into how the eight consciousnesses are purified. The first primordial awareness that he talks about specifically is the primordial awareness of the Dharmadhatu. And this corresponds to the primordial awareness that knows the nature of reality exactly as it is. And this is a complete transformation of the all-base consciousness. And this is the basis that is necessary for anyone and everyone to become enlightened. The reason is that it is the all base is the basis of all external and internal delusions. The all base consciousness is where memories are stored, karma is stored, all kinds of things are stored there and then brought up at a later time. I have talked about it being a bit like a hard drive. We store things on it and then we bring them up. Our sense objects already has been explained as being experienced internally, whereas confused beings see them as an external experience, as existing externally. If we look at them closely, we say that they are experienced internally by sense consciousnesses. So the Dharmadhatu is very simply the sphere of experience, or the sphere of phenomena. Everything arises from it. There is nothing that is beyond it. It's completely pure. It's not a matter of purification because it is beyond purity and impurity. When we meditate and achieve a high degree of concentration, we can experience perfect peace and freedom from all mental projections. This is an experience of this primordial awareness that sees the true nature of all phenomena. And I thought it would be good to take a little bit of a closer examination of this to try to explain this in a little more detail. So I am going to read a little bit here. It is by Jamgon Khantrul III, and this is in a text of a teaching that he gave on the aspiration prayer of Mahamudra that we do at the end of Nyungne. So I'm just going to read here to begin with. All phenomena appear because they are not established in their own essence. It cannot be said that conventional reality is a mistake and ultimate reality is not. If one understands this incorrectly and thinks it is necessary to block or bring to cessation appearances that one experience and to establish some sort of emptiness as a goal, then one has fallen into the extreme mental supposition that reifies emptiness. So it's not that we have to stop these ordinary experiences and outer appearances. It's just we have to understand their true nature, that they are temporary, they are interdependent, and these sorts of understandings. Now, to go on, he says, quote, the purpose of understanding the indivisibility of the two truths or the twofold realities is to realize that all things that appear and are categorized as conventional reality or conventional truths are in their own nature without a self-established entity, that is, without inherent existence. This is the ultimate truth. Therefore, the two realities have always been integrated and are two aspects of one and the same thing. So it is a correct understanding that the basis or ground to be known in this way. So that's what he says about this. Getting back to the book, the Dharma Dhatu is peace itself. It's free of the slightest suffering. There are no afflictions, no attachment, grasping, pride, jealousy, anger, or anything else related to confusion and delusions. So this is the basis of the other four primordial awarenesses. The next one he talks about is mirror-like primordial awareness. And it is known as, quote, the complete mode of being of all sentient beings due to mirror-like wisdom. That we see like a mirror reflects whatever is before it. If we have this kind of wisdom, we do not add anything to what we see. It's free of thoughts, free of elaboration, no commentary, judgments or opinions. There's no good or bad. So this is how mirror-like wisdom is. And that's why they call it mirror-like. It just sees what is there. A Buddha sees this, things are the way they appear to sentient beings, but again, the Buddha would see them as mere appearances, whereas we see them with our kleshas, our karma, our judgment, and so forth. And we see the way things appear to be solid, real, inherently existing. And on top of that, ordinary beings don't know, they are never separate from their Buddha nature and purity. They don't see the ultimate reality. A lot of times we don't even have a clue that we have it. Trungpa Rinpoche talks a little bit next about, well, if you're seeing the way things are, but you're also seeing the way things appear, does it appear to be a contradiction? And I've kind of touched on this already, but I'm going to go into the way he explains it. It's this dream analogy, but here a enlightened being has extrasensory perception, and they're just being aware of another person's dream. And they realize that the other person is dreaming. They realize the other person is buying into the dream entirely. But the Buddha does not buy into it. The Buddha sees that it is just the activity of the mind and it has no inherent existence. An enlightened being would not get sucked into believing it's real. So the Buddha, knowing that it's not real, does not develop any kleshas or suffering or any other confusion. A Buddha would know that a dream tiger of the dreamer is a fabrication. That's another example that he used. So the Buddha does not get thrown off balance by this sort of knowledge. There's no reason for fear to arise. So this is the function of mirror-like primordial awareness. It just sees everything as it is. And it can see from different perspectives too. couple of days ago, I was at my kitchen sink. It was noon, the sun was bright, and I've noticed something very interesting. I took a picture of it and posted on my Facebook page. There was a small moth that was on the screen, and the sun was coming almost directly above, and on my windowsill was a shadow of the moth. And the shadow of the moth was V-shaped. And the actual picture of the moth on the screen showed the wings outspread and was one-dimensional. So with this picture, you got a two-dimensional moth. You had one with his wings spread out, then you had one from above with a V. So mirror-like wisdom sees that. It will see it from many angles, but again, no judgment. The next primordial awareness is that of equality. And when the appearances are seen like a reflection in a mirror and realized that way, again, there's no attachment, no grasping. And this brings in the idea of equality or equanimity. The klesha mind starts grasping, but without an I and an other, there is no pleasant or unpleasant and no neutral. Then there's no attachment and aversion. So when we train in meditative concentration, this tames our mind. The input from the five sense consciousnesses, from our seventh consciousness, the klesha conscious, and the eighth consciousness, the all-baith consciousness, are pacified. Grasping at the self diminishes, and this barrier between self and other falls apart, and we have this feeling of being equal to others or others being equal to us. There's not this differentiation between us and others. It doesn't mean that you see everybody as being the same, but there is this feeling of equality. You still, because of mirror-like primordial awareness, you see differences. That is important to understand. You see differences, but you still see that they are not below you, that there is this equality. Then comes the discriminating awareness. Then the question is, well, what about good and bad? Buddha doesn't blur everything into one. They know the specific details without mixing things up because of their mirror-like wisdom. But discriminating means that you see details and differences, but again, no judgments, no editorial comments. With this wisdom, you see the problems all sentient beings have and the remedy for particular people. One size does not fit all. So with this discriminating primordial awareness, you see how you can benefit each and every single sentient being. This results from the transformation of the mind consciousness, the sixth consciousness. And it is going from a diluted sixth consciousness to a non-diluted sixth consciousness. He ends this section with, quote, the discriminating primordial awareness perceives specific individual differences without mixing up the perceptions. The next is the primordial awareness that accomplishes all actions. He posits the question, can a Buddha's realization of the previous wisdoms that is free from all delusions make a Buddha out of touch? That a Buddha is so far different from ordinary beings, they're just not able to make, you might say, a connection with sentient beings and perform enlightened actions. You may remember that when the Buddha attained enlightenment, he waited for 40 days to teach because he was thinking that no one's going to believe him. But yes, an enlightened being can perform enlightened activity, which is motivated by benefiting others and liberating others, and they can liberate other beings. The Buddha realizes things precisely. They see the three times, the past, the present, and the future. A Buddha knows the mind of sentient beings seamlessly, and they are able to accomplish enlightened activities as a result of this. In fact, perfectly accomplish enlightened activities. The Tibetan word for this is trinlay. These wisdoms enhance the enlightened activity. This primordial, all-accomplishing wisdom is actually quite powerful and accomplishes a lot. And it is intended, again, to separate sentient beings from their suffering, to liberate them, and so forth. And this particular primordial awareness is a result of the transformation of the five sense consciousnesses: the eyes, the eye consciousness, ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousnesses. We direct our activities outwards because of this type of primordial awareness, and these senses direct our minds outward. So a perfect Buddha is able to perform activities with these five primordial awarenesses. To kind of sum this up, related to the eight consciousnesses, the Dharmadhatu primordial awareness is a result of the transformation of the eighth consciousness. The discriminating awareness consciousness comes from the transformation of the mind consciousness, and the all-accomplishing primordial awareness comes from the transformation of the five sense consciousnesses. The next subject is the abode of the primordial awarenesses. And of course, the abode is in all sentient beings. And within all sentient beings, the abode is mind, and that is the eight consciousnesses. We all have these eight consciousnesses, and we all have this true primordial wisdom, but it is more in the potential stage rather than the transformational stage. But our minds have two aspects, which is emptiness and clarity. The problem is that in our confused state, and that of all sentient beings, is too much emphasis is placed on clarity, and we get totally distracted by all the appearances that we get through our five senses, and we miss the emptiness aspect. We get, you might say, very, very sucked into grasping at relative reality and totally miss absolute reality. He doesn't use the word, but I'm going to use it. That causes us to be unbalanced. Got too much this and not enough that. So we need to develop this primordial awareness, this, again, jhana or yeshe. Understanding that helps let go of our attachment to all the various appearances of relative reality. They are based on delusion. Their essence is ignorance, and we turn them into mental afflictions. And as a result of that, then we have all kinds of suffering. I'm getting too much of this that causes me pain and that I don't like and is causing me difficulties. And I'm not getting enough things that cause me to be happy, and on and on and on and on. So confusion arises from our mind, and the solution is within, it's not outside. Oftentimes, confused beings think that the solution is to get your ducks in a row, to get the right job, to have the right partner, to have the right car, to buy the right things, to have the right friends, and so on and so forth. But that isn't the way it works. If you're not happy before you get what you want, you're not going to be happy for long afterwards, if you're happy after you get it. I'm keep reminded of how my house was built in 1895. There was one closet in the whole house. And there was no garage. You didn't have a car. Then a one-car garage was great. Then two-car garage, they were better. Now three-car garages aren't enough. You need a shed out in back besides your three-car garage because you don't have enough storage room for your stuff. I just had a meeting with my insurance agent, and she was very interested in how many walk-in closets I've got in the house. It's like that. You never have enough stuff. Our confused mind thinks that we just need to have more stuff and then we're going to be happy. So confusion is inside, it's not outside. We have to discover our own true Buddha nature and to allow it to surface. So the method is to train in meditation, to practice Dharma. And this helps transform these 8 collections of consciousnesses and liberate ourselves from suffering. Again, delusion, the problem is that we don't recognize emptiness as an aspect. And he talks about coexistent emergence of emptiness and clarity. I have come across the term co-emergent wisdom more frequently. A lot of this has to do with the translator. This is an important point, but this coexistent emergence basically the same as co-emergent. The point being that we have to realize that clarity and emptiness arise together rather than emphasizing one or the other. If you emphasize emptiness, then you think that appearances shouldn't be there and you want to block them. And if you just emphasize clarity, you end up in the midst of samsara. So we need to meditate, and this helps propel us on the path towards the primordial awareness of Dharmadhatu. He says that in the beginning, we will not be able to directly meditate on this primordial Dharmadhatu awareness. So you start by having a strong conviction of it, and then over time, that conviction gains strength. We start getting some experience, and it has a snowballing effect. We can mentally create this true nature of the Dharmadhatu and gradually come to experience it. This is why we practice. I remember Lama Kathy talking about visualizations of ourselves as the deity, and she would say, fake it till you make it. It's kind of that way. You have this confidence that it is there, and then you practice, and eventually it starts working, it starts clicking, and you actually see progress. And then this direct seeing of the Dharmadhatu, the primordial awareness of the Dharmadhatu arises. It might be a glimpse, but with that, then automatically comes glimpses of the other 4 primordial awarenesses. Now he has a number of practices that can be done to help propel us on the path. And of course, the first one is calm, abiding meditation. And then along with that is Vipassana meditation, deep insight meditation. Looking deeply, there's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which I've talked about in the past, and I talked about last Sunday again, too. Looking deeply at how we experience our body, how we experience outer phenomena, how we experience feelings, and our mind. And you need a foundation of shamatha meditation for that. Then there is the contemplation on the 4 ordinary foundations: precious human birth, impermanence, karma as cause and effect, and the unsatisfactory state of samsara, that there's no safe place in samsara. Then, having contemplated that, there's the 4 extraordinary foundations, also known as Nundro. On top of that, we can do deity practice, the creation and completion stages of deity practice. So all of this gives us the energy and the potential to experience the results. He doesn't mention Mahamudra, but that also is a practice that's very powerful and will help us reach the goal. is realization of primordial awareness of the Dharma Dhatu.